And so one of the things I was asked to speak about is the safety and efficacy of chiropractic, specifically chiropractic as a piece of this CAM care, because we fall into that category and we're often posed with this question of, is chiropractic safe and what does it really do? And so we're going to talk a little bit about that now. And our story, I wish I could go into this with even more detail because it reads like a tabloid, but our story begins with the formation of the American Medical Association in 1847. So in 1847, the AMA is formed, and they very quickly start campaigning to label any competing medical doctors or any competing healers, because medical doctors aren't really defined at that point, as pseudoscience and quackery. And which is, of course, we need to remember at this time, medical doctors were still bloodletting their patients and cutting their medicines with mercury and compounds like that. So nobody's really got the science down at this point. But this is where the AMA starts. Now, a handful of years later, chiropractic is created in the United States. And less than 5 years later, medical doctors form or try to create rules that you cannot be considered a doctor or a healer if you do not administer medicine. So unless you're giving your patient medicine, you can't be called a doctor. And if you say that, then you're practicing medicine without a license, or you're, lying to your patients, something like that. And this is aimed specifically at the founder of chiropractic, but it kicks off this national smear campaign, which is really entertaining to dig into, which we won't do. But it's only a handful of years before the first chiropractor is arrested in the United States for practicing medicine or claiming to be a medical practitioner, but not administering a drug, therefore going against that idea that the AMA has created that you must give drugs to be a doctor or a healer. And these arrests go on through the 1950s. We see chiropractors routinely arrested, sometimes the same chiropractor more than once, because they keep getting released for lack of evidence, and they go back to practicing, and then they're arrested again. Through the 1950s. And in fact, in 1963, the AMA establishes the Committee on Quackery, whose goal is to, quote, contain and eliminate the chiropractic profession and decrease insurance coverage and access to care. In 1966, the AMA labels chiropractic an unscientific cult, though we had been working on testing our theories since 1935. And in the 1980s, the AMA declares it unethical to even associate with a chiropractor. And it's not until 1987, the fall of 1987, that courts rule that the AMA have violated the Sherman Act and engaged in unlawful conspiracy to restrain trade. That's how recent this is, right? And so here we are in 2021, and I'm asked to speak to you about whether or not chiropractic is safe and effective. Because it's still a question in everyone's mind because of hundreds of years of history between chiropractic and the AMA in this country, building this mistrust, and only very recently turning that around. And the question is very mainstream. And I know that because in 2019, this gentleman here made national news when he cracked his own neck and gave himself a bilateral cerebral artery dissection and lived to tell the tale. And my patients came to me, and many people came, and news companies said, well, how do we know that chiropractic is safe, right? This guy cracked his neck and he got a stroke. How do we know that chiropractic is safe? And my question to them was that if I performed an appendectomy on myself and gave myself an infection and turned around and said, well, how do we know that surgery is safe? Wouldn't that be absurd? Like, I don't have the tools, the training, the skills, none of it. I'm lucky if I even got my own appendix, let alone did it with proper procedure and technique. And it's no wonder that there was a disastrous result. That's two different things. So here we still are, and people still ask about this chiropractic and stroke. And so what we have previously said is that you have a 1 in 500,000 chance of being struck by lightning. You have a 1 in a million chance of flipping heads on a coin toss 25 times in a row. And previously, you had a 1 in 3 million chance of having a stroke after a neck adjustment from a chiropractor. In contrast, your chances are 1 in 92 of dying in the United States in 2019 from opioid use, according to the National Safety Council. And I say that 1 in 3 million number is, we used to say that because in 2016, we really saw a shift in the literature showing that there's no correlation between chiropractic care and cerebral artery dissection. And in fact, I love this article here from 2016, which says that not only do we not see a correlation between stroke and chiropractic, but there was no significant difference between chiropractic and PCP risk for stroke. And that tells us that these patients were symptomatic. These patients knew something was wrong. They knew something was about to happen, and they went to their doctor. They most likely had severe neck pain and tightness. They were starting to stroke. They were starting to have that dissection. They went to their doctor. Some went to their chiropractor, someone went to their PCP, but that process was underway already because there's no matter what that doctor did, the outcome was the same. And I think that's really helpful to put these numbers into perspective, right?